So, as was mentioned on the previous slide, we need to know, for the exam in particular, the different countries at different stages. Now, as you can see on this map, we've got a key here that tells us the countries that are at the various stages, so red stage 1 and so on. And we're going to pick out particular examples and talk a little bit about them. So the one example, as you can see, or a couple of examples you can see at stage 1, this red bit here, which is the remote part of Amazonia, and then over this side of the map, the remote parts of Indonesia. Now, in parts of Indonesia, Brazil and Ecuador, small numbers of people live separately with little contact with the outside world. They retain high birth rates and high death rates, making them the people closest to a true stage 1 situation in the world today. However, that's a very, very small proportion of the world's population. Stage 2, which is your orangey colour, the example that you are going to use is Afghanistan over here. And as we know a lot about obviously in the news, Afghanistan is an extremely poor country which has been held back by political instability. It has one of the world's highest birth rates at 37.8 and a much lower death rate of 17.4. Therefore, the natural increase is 2.04% per year. Some 79% of people are farmers and often nomadic, which means they wander about to farm. So the need for children to help with crops and livestock is obviously a lot, so they have a lot of children to help them with the farms. Cities such as Kabul, the capital, have even higher rates of natural increase because easier access to medical care reduces the death rate, while high numbers of young adults who have migrated to the cities increase the birth rate. Stage 3 is Brazil. Now, Brazil is this country here in South America, and as we already said, a little part of Brazil, which is Amazonia, is in stage 1, but the rest of Brazil is in stage 3. And Brazil is what we know as a newly industrialising country. Although it is a country at a lesser stage of development, it is developing fast economically. Brazil's population will have almost doubled between 1975 and 2015, from 108 million to 210 million people. And as a Roman Catholic country, it has a high birth rate. But rapidly improving standards of living mean people can see the benefits from having fewer children. You might wonder why the Catholic thing is relevant. Catholics don't believe in the use of condoms and therefore is a source of birth control. Stage 4, we could have ourselves. So over here we are at stage 4, but our example we're going to use is the USA. And the USA is the largest and most developed economy in the world. It's the world's third largest population after China and India, with over 313 million people in 2011. Its growth is quite high for a stage 4 country. This is mostly due to immigration though. People are migrating from Catholic Central America around here, so your Mexicos and so on. But the USA is now encouraging a more highly trained Asian workforce who are likely to have lower birth rates as well. And then finally, as I've talked about, stage 5, as you can see, stage 5 is normally within Europe, those Eastern European countries, Scandinavia here with Sweden. But our example is Germany, and Germany is almost as well developed as the USA, but it has moved a stage further in the demographic transition model. Women achieving high-powered positions at work, so getting good jobs and not wanting children, plus an ageing population, so people living to an old age, are factors that have brought Germany clearly into stage 5, where the death rate, remember, is higher than the birth rate. One of the first countries to enter this stage, Germany's birth rate is well below the replacement rate, and the replacement rate is a term that means a birth rate high enough for a generation to be the same size as the one before it. The government has to cope with the costs of a largely elderly population and a declining workforce. There are a number of factors that affect population growth, and these are listed on here. So you've got agricultural change, urbanisation, education, and the emancipation and status of women. So I'm going to take each one of these in turn. Changes in agriculture occur early in a country's development. Even at intermediate levels, technology improves yields and saves labour. So in other words, it frees some workers for industry and more rapid economic growth. In the Industrial Revolution in the UK, factories needed a large workforce, so for a while Larger families were a benefit. Soon, however, technological advantages reduced the need for labour. So in other words, there were machines and so on that took the jobs of people, making smaller families more desirable there because of the fact that people would have to pay for the children and so on to go through school and stuff that we talked about in the previous slide, and reduce as the population growth. Urbanisation, rural to urban migration, so it's where people moving from the countryside into the towns and cities, and it's common in poorer countries as cities are believed to have great opportunities and generally do, so the chance of more jobs, better living conditions, more entertainment, better houses and so on. One major reason for such migration is to seek better educational opportunities for children. Children's labour is therefore of less value in cities than in rural areas, so they don't need the children in those city areas. Highly urbanised societies tend to have lower rates of population growth, so where there's lots of towns and cities. Education. As levels of educational achievement increase, that brings improved standards of living. Children become an economic disadvantage. Obviously, we know about in this country people are having to pay to go off to university and so on, tuition fees and so on. It's going to cost money. Fewer children means parents have more money to be spent on each one, giving them better future chances. If you have 10 children and have to share your money out, you can't give each one of those 10 children as good a chance as if you maybe only had 2 children. So many parents in poorer countries see education as their children's best chance in life, and increased educational opportunities tend to result in lower rates of population growth. The final factor that we're going to look at that affects the population growth and causes it to reduce is the emancipation and status of women. Now, as economies develop and education improves, opportunities for girls increase alongside those of boys. So previously where boys would have got the jobs and so on, girls now have a better chance, and with development of a larger workforce, more women participate in paid work outside the home, and reach a good standard of living in a household requires 2 incomes now, so you need both the man and the woman to go out and get a job. Over time, prejudice against women holding more senior positions at work reduces, so those top jobs, management jobs and so on, more chance of women getting them now. Inequality increases and is perceived as not only acceptable but desirable. They want women to get these top jobs. Countries like Sweden have changed the law to increase the proportions of women in management and government, for example, and improvements in the status of women leads to lower birth rates, because obviously if they've got a job, a good job that they don't want to kind of leave, they'll leave it later to start having children, and so that slows down the rate of population growth. However, achieving highly in any career demands a large time commitment, leaving less opportunity to take maternity leave or caring for children. Some women make deliberate choices regarding not having children, or they'll have them later in their life, and as these increases in economy develops. Larger families, or even having a family at all, may be rejected. 1 in 5 women in the UK today is childless, compared with 1 in 10 in their mother's generation, so a generation ago. Another issue for working women is childcare. It's very expensive to get your children looked after, and because of that, people are deciding not to have the children so they can spend the money on their own quality of life.